Okay. All right. So, buying property. Now, can you buy property in a trust? Depends. Okay. If you're buying property with no debt, absolutely. If you're paying cash for the property, that is, you can buy it in the name of your trust if you wanted to do that. So what you would do is you would create your land trust right here. So this is my land trust. Then I would fund it. So I'm the beneficiary. I would transfer the money into the trust for the purchase of that property. Something I'm going to be covering this afternoon. If you're going to ever buy in the name of a trust, oh no, that's coming to the other side. Okay, hold on. So anyways, you transfer the money into the trust and then you take title. Pay from the trust, so you have a trust account set up, a bank account in the name of that trust. Title will close in the name of the trust. Funds will move out of the trust in order to cover the purchase of the property. If you're buying property in which you're going to get a loan, most of the time lenders will tell you that they will not loan or issue a loan if you're not going on title. They'll tell you can move it into your trust after the loan is closed and you've taken title of the property, but they will not close into the trust. Now that has been relaxed. In the last 6 months, I've seen lenders that are willing to close in the name of a grantor trust. They're going to want to see a copy of your trust agreement, so there's no assignment language, never. See, people will contact our clients sometimes and say, we need a copy of our trust. And people assume that everything I provide you is what the other party's requesting. It's not. All you have to provide them is about 35 pages, not the other ancillary documents we've sent you. If you send them those ancillary documents, that's going to create a problem for you. So just call us and ask us. We'll tell you exactly what to send them. But when they ask for the trust document, it's just that page that starts with the recital. You're creating this trust, and then the last page where you sign. Everything in between that is your trust. If it doesn't fit within page 1 through 30-some, then don't send it to them because they don't need that information. You're most likely to give them stuff that's just going to create more questions. So when you're going to buy property in the name of your trust, look for a lender that's a community bank, a regional bank. They're more apt to allow you to take title in the name of your trust. And then, again, you're going to go through the same process where you create the trust. You have to give them, again, a copy of the trust agreement, and it's going to show that you're the trustee. You and your wife are going to be the beneficiaries of that trust. You're not going to have any mention about an LLC in there. It's going to have it's going to have a bank account, some money in there to close in the name of it. You'll still be the one on the debt as a responsible party on that loan, but title will be taken there. Now, when it comes to closing, if you don't want your name to appear in the deed, when they ask you for the name of the trust, do not provide them the trustee language. Give them only the name of your trust like I showed you earlier, right? The whatever beautiful, bountiful trust dated July 19th, 2012. Do not include Clint Coons as trustee. Leave that off and see if they'll take it. 99% of the time, they'll take it. Again, because they got a copy of the trust agreement here, they see you want to take title like that, it's an okay. So that's a situation where you can actually close in the name of your trust, and I have a few people just last month that have done it, close in the name of their trust that way. First they were going to do it, and they were going to give their name as trustee. I said, don't give them the name as trustee, give them this name, see if they took it. They took it. No problem whatsoever. So that's an option. I mean, I find anyways when it comes to dealing with lenders, that's who you're going to be working with more and more. You're not going to be working with the bigger banks because they don't want to loan you money. They just want to really upset you. I got a story for that. So why else do we use land trusts? I mean, the big one is acceleration protection. This is why most investors are using them. You don't want to move property into a business entity and have the lender accelerate your note. That is, in your mortgage agreement, there's a clause in there that allows the lender to accelerate it if there's ever been a transfer. Now, it's not necessarily going to happen. I haven't seen it occur all that often. The only time I ever see this come up is when a lender is audited by a insurer, and the insurer is pulling the mortgages, and they say, hey, wait a minute here, we got a problem. You loan money to him, but he's no longer the owner of the property. It's held by an LLC, and then that opens you up, and the lender will pull all your notes that you have with them. So The way we defeat that is we put it into a land trust first, because it's a revocable trust. And then that prevents the lender from accelerating the note, because the Garn-St. Germain Depository Act specifically carved out an exception for this to prevent abuses by lenders who were forcing people to refinance mortgages because the property was transferred into a trust. So that is an issue. But again, one of the things to keep in mind, if you're transferring property you already own that's encumbered into a land trust, do not call your bank and discuss it with them. Okay? Nothing good can ever come of that. And in fact, you may find that the bank says, hey, no problem. Put it into a trust. We encourage you to do that. And then you do it, and then 6 months later or 6 weeks later, you get a statement from the bank charging you a title transfer fee for 1% of your outstanding mortgage balance. Yeah, those are in a lot of mortgages now. You have a title transfer fee. Why? Because they can just put it in there and you'll sign the agreement because you haven't read it and objected to it. They're buried in those agreements now. Bank doesn't do anything. They allow you to transfer title, they can assess a fee on you now. So that's why it's no point in even bringing it to their attention. So we pretty much covered that one, how that works out when you move it into the trust. So here's an example of the assignment phase now, of how you assign an interest over to the trust. And what I was getting at is this, that once you've got the property in the trust, so this is my land trust right here, my property's in there, I know title's cleared, the assessor's not asking me for additional information, or I've already provided my information. Now is the time to assign my beneficial interest over to my limited liability company, of which I am a member, and possibly my corporation as a manager, depending on how you set it up. So you're going to take this beneficial interest and you need to move it over there. Now, how do you move your interest over to your LLC? What are the mechanics behind that? Well, it's simple. You need to prepare something that looks like this, and this is also in your appendix package. I think it should be number 2, unless I'm off on my numbering here. This is an assignment of the beneficial interest in the 546 Red Lane Trust. All you do here is we provide these to you. Okay, you just fill out the name of your LLC and you put in the trust name. So here's my trust name. Here's John Investor's address, blah, 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 for do a signer, the XYZ LLC, and you sign this. So see, John Investor would sign right down here his intent to assign over his trust to this limited liability company. What you're doing now is you're transferring your beneficial interest and making the LLC the owner of that. This is a crucial step in making sure that the LLC owns the trust. Now, it's also important that you have this notarized. This is one document that better be notarized, because that is your fallback position if anybody challenges when that transfer took place. Because the thing about land trusts is that you can move them around without alerting the fact that these interests have been moved. I mean, for example, if I was in litigation, and I'm not this type of person, but I've heard it's been done. I don't condone this. But you could have 3 LLCs set up here. Okay, you probably know where I'm going with this. These are all disregarded LLCs, so there's no tax returns to come back and bite you in the hiney, because people say, oh, that property used to be owned by that LLC because it was carried on its tax return. You don't have that. Everything's been on your Schedule E. You have 3 land trusts set up in this one LLC. Now, this property right here, and this land trust number 1 is under attack. And you know that land trust number 2 and number 3 are also at risk because there's no protection there, because they're all held in that same LLC. So you think to yourself, you know, this assignment never existed. Actually, there was an assignment from me to this LLC. It was LLC number 2 that held it. And so you assign them all out. So then when they ask you, what does LLC number 1 own? You tell them, it only owns that one land trust because you moved everything out. And then they ask you, did it ever own anything else? And then you perjure yourself because you want to protect yourself from this lawsuit. So that, you can see what can go on there. Notarize them. Don't play those types of games, because if you're ever caught, you will be in problems then. But the notarization is important because you could see what somebody might argue. If they were suing you individually, they would say, oh, isn't that convenient? This land trust is now owned by an LLC. How do we know you didn't transfer that beneficial interest the day we served you to protect yourself from this lawsuit? That's when you bring out the assignment and say, see the date it was notarized? Okay, unless the notary's in on it with me. Okay, this was transferred 3 years ago. I didn't transfer it just as soon as I got sued, so there's no fraudulent transfer claim there. Now you want your trustee to acknowledge it, so your trustee must acknowledge the fact that there's been a transfer of your beneficial interest. That's important as well. And then you want your LLC to acknowledge its acceptance. These are the 3 crucial steps in transferring a beneficial interest of a land trust to an LLC. Follow those each and every time, and you're covered. If you want these forms, if you have our land trust, we provided them to you. You're in this class. I'll send you the Word document as well if you need it. But that's how we go about assigning over the beneficial interest. And it takes place at a certain time, and we're going to get to that, and I'll show you when you're moving that over. So the other thing about land trusts is that they simplify property transfers as well. Here's what I like about trusts. When you're buying properties, many times we're going to put 3 properties possibly or 2 properties in one limited liability company because we're looking at the overall equity of the properties themselves. And we're saying, how much do we want at risk? Do we want to put $20,000, have an LLC set up to protect only $20,000? Or are we going to group some properties together where the sum total equity in all 3 properties is under $250K? A lot of people will do that. Just for ease of, for cost to begin with, ease of administration, they'll group some of their properties. But in the future, things will change. Equities will go up, not either because of appreciation or because you're paying down the mortgages. So then, in the future, you want to do this. You want to move this property here over to a new LLC that you've created so that you can limit your overall risk exposure amongst these LLCs. So how would you do that? Any ideas? How would I get property out of here, LLC number 1, into LLC number 2? It's not held in land trust right now. It's just held directly in the name of the LLC. What would you do? Deed it where? From this LLC to this LLC? Do you see a problem with that? Why? Transfer tax. Actually, transfer tax would not apply. Well, that's a whole nother issue altogether. Okay? Wait till we cover Prop 13 on the transfer tax issue. The problem with that is deeding. Remember I talked about moving money? Yeah, there's no difference. This entity isn't owned by this entity. So why would this entity deed property over here? So you're right. So here's what you have to do. You're right here. Remember the circuit again? Property is deeded to you as the beneficiary, and then you deed the property into LLC number 2. Now, I'm just going to throw it out there right away. Under Prop 13 in California, that would constitute a reassessment. Under Prop 13, it would. It would constitute a reassessment. You can move, and we'll cover this again, it's in your book. You can move properties between entities, but you can't move properties out of entities back to yourself, then they'll reassess it. So, you have a problem here. Number 1, reassessment, because its deed has to be filed. The second problem is you have to file 2 deeds. There's problems there, right? You could screw one of them up, cloud your title. If you're trying to sell it in the future, they see 2 transfers. You decide to sell it in 6 months, bank won't allow somebody to buy it because they saw 2 transfers in a 6-month period. They think maybe you're churning the property. So you can see where the issues lie here. And you have recording costs as well that go along with it. So by creating a land trust for each property, we're going to simplify this. So if I have each property held in its own land trust, like that, and it's held by the LLC. Now, if we want to go from here, move this interest right here over to here, we still have to go through you. We still have to move through you because there is no connection between these 2 LLCs. This is LLC right here, number 2. So what we'll do is this. We will assign the interest to you, put it into your name. So just like we did with the transfer into the LLC, we reverse the transaction. In this case, the LLC will assign the beneficial interest to you as an individual. Then you notarize it, you become the beneficial owner of that LLC, you turn around and assign the beneficial interest in that land trust to LLC number 2. And so it's just stamp, 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 and now LLC number 2 owns the property. Does anybody know about that? Have you alerted any lenders of the fact that you've transferred it? No. Does the county know that you've transferred it? Nobody knows that this interest has been transferred to a second LLC because those documents are your private documents. So they'll remain there with you. So from a transfer standpoint, this simplifies the overall movement of property. So land trusts are really good from that, in that context. Even with properties that's paid off. Typically, I'll tell people if it's paid off and it's outside of California, just drop it directly into the LLC. If you're grouping properties in one LLC, say you had 3 properties valued at $50,000, you put all of them into there, they're all each $50,000 properties, I would do it through land trusts. I would have just to simplify the future property movement that way. You got a question? When I want to sell the property. Okay. All right, now, the question is, when you want to sell the property, is there a break in the title chain? Title chain only shows one transfer. Let's say we set this up 10 years ago. The only thing in title will show that Clint transferred the property into this land trust right here. So when I go to sell the property, I will sell it out of the land trust. It's the current owner of record of that property. Title does not show the beneficiaries. So that's how it solves that issue by utilizing this structure in this manner. So there, the beneficiaries are the ones who sign the grant deed. Now, to take it one step further with that, in some instances, to simplify the sale of property, I will recommend you distribute the property to the beneficiary out of the land trust, put it into the name of the LLC or put it into your name and then sell it. If you think that there's going to be a hang-up with the bank. Sometimes banks do not like dealing with trusts. That is from the buyer's perspective. Or maybe there's a problem with title. You just want to make sure there's no issues with title insurance. Then by getting title insurance on the property, put it in your own name. It might be easier for that, for you to put that deal together. You'll notice also this comes up with encumbering the real estate. If you need to take out a mortgage or get an equity line of credit against property that's held in a land trust, first find a lender that will allow you to take the equity line without having to remove the property out of the trust. Shop around for your lender. Say, hey, this is what I got. I got a grantor trust set up. It owns my property. Will you allow me to get an equity line of credit against that property without having to pull it out? If they tell you no, spend an hour calling 6 or 7 banks to see if you can find one that will do it. If the answer to that is no, they won't, then you have to pull the property out of the land trust. Now, here's the thing. In California, if that was held in your LLC and you move it out, there's a Prop 13 readjustment there. But if it's held in a land trust, move the land trust out to yourself, then pull the property out into your own name, that is, deed it to yourself, do the refi on the property, pull the cash out, put the property back into the land trust, move the land trust back into the LLC. Nobody knows about it, what was going on there. So it stays in your own private records in that way. So that's how we utilize. I mean, 7, 8 years ago, I wasn't the fan of these trusts as I am today. I saw them more as an additional step, but things have become more complicated in dealing with banks. And so now I'm actually finding myself recommending them and using them more and more than I ever have in the past for their title holding capacity. I like them. Is there a time limit about moving them in and out? There is no time limit. You can move them in and out at your own whim. You decide when you want to move the properties in and out.